Okay, back to the rest of the list. Up next is Necronomico and the Cosmic Horror Show. This is a show that, based on the title, I thought I was going to have a lot of interest in, and then apparently people fucking hated this show. No clue what it's about other than it might be kind of, like, brutal in terms of, like, a cosmic horror sense. In any case, let's give it a go. You know, on the one hand, I am curious to see what this show is going for. Not because I think, like, it's interesting or anything, but just because I genuinely have no idea what angle it's going for. Like, they go into a VR game. I got halfway through the first episode, and they go into a VR game, and it looks like shit. And it just looks like it's being a VR game. I presume there's going to be a twist at some point, because the show opened with the fact that the world is ending. But, like, there's no, like, it doesn't feel like there's a cosmic twist to anything that's happening at this point. I feel like at least by the halfway point you would have played something from your hand to give people an idea of what this show is going to be like, but it's mostly just been like a series of events with live streamers that I just don't know what tone it's going for. I really don't. It's just, other than, like, show, it is an anime, I guess. And it's also a really fucking ugly one. Like, I do kind of like the color design just because it's, like, colorful but not super garish. But by God, the character designs fucking suck. These are some ugly ass character designs. No ways about it. It is bad. And then they go into the virtual world and it looks like fucking knockoff Fall Guys. Like, the most recent Precure already did knock off Fall Guys, and now this show's doing it. How many knockoff Fall Guys things are we gonna get in anime? Like, did Fall... Do people even play Fall Guys still? Like, I know it takes a while for production to get going on these things, but you kind of have to keep that in mind, because I don't know anyone who still plays Fall Guys. Maybe it's still popular in Japan, but I don't get what angle this show's going for, but also I kind of don't care to find out, because I don't really want to waste my time on it. Alright, Necronomico is off the list. Up next, Me and the Alien MuMu. This is a 2-core series continuing from last season that I have not heard anyone talk about at all. Maybe it's hidden gem? Maybe not. I literally have no clue what to expect other than there's an alien. Let's find out. I don't understand why this one in particular didn't get licensed. It's not good. I only made it like 3 minutes in. It's like really kind of annoying to watch. But I don't really understand why it didn't get licensed. Maybe it's because, like, I read a little bit more on it afterwards, and it's apparently like an educational show? Maybe? About potentially home appliances? But also there were a bunch of shots of different animals in the opening scene. Like, there was a water buffalo and some ants and the garden eels. So maybe it's also like a National Geographic kind of show? I don't really care to find out because I don't like the alien character. Very annoying. And also, very fucking stupid that, like, they're constantly dancing around the alien's face in this. Like, they keep cutting away before you see the full face or only seeing part of it. But it's like, it's very clearly just a cat. It's just a cat. I didn't get to the face reveal yet, but it's just a cat. There's no way that it's not just a cat. Based on the fact that we've seen 95% of the character model, closer to 99% really, it's just a cat. Why are we dancing around the fact that it's just a cat? The cinematography's kind of annoying. It's not good. Alright, MuMu coming off the list. Alright, next is New Saga. What a generic name. I'm gonna guess it's some kind of fantasy anime, maybe even an isekai. That's all I can say based on the name. Let's find out. Okay, if you're going to, like, info dump your world building, and it's going to be the most generic fucking world building possible, limit it to, like, 30 seconds and not 2 minutes at the start of the first episode. Because by that point, I'm already bored out of my fucking mind that you wasted 2 minutes of your 24 minutes on essentially nothing. Like, you have said nothing other than, this is a fantasy world where fantasy races fight demons. You have said nothing. You have made a Lord of the Rings variation. Congratulations. And then the next 2 to 3 minutes are the hero charging at the Demon King's castle and losing all of his allies along the way. And normally I don't care to look up plot synopses for this, but I was like, where the fuck is this going? And it's like, oh, and I didn't even get to this point. It's like, apparently this is one where it's like he fails, and then he goes back in time to the beginning of the mission, and so he knows what to do right. But boy, I don't care, because this show has already shown me that it doesn't know how to write, and it doesn't know how to pace, in terms of, like, doling out, like, important information and, like, getting us to care about characters. Here's how you could have hooked me with this. First of all, cut the fucking exposition. No one needs that. No one needs it. You can piecemeal it throughout the show. That's just padding. That's just 2 minutes of padding at the beginning of the episode. And then be like, start immediately at the resurrection or being sent back to the beginning of the time loop. And then just, like, have him, like, figure out that that's what happened. Show us some flashes of what just happened, and then jump into the story. Or, like, have him not realize what happened over the course of the first episode, and then at the end of that first episode he realizes what happened. Be like have something happen where, like, wait, no, don't do that, that's gonna do a thing. And, like, he's slowly realizing what happens. That would be an interesting way to present this story. But this is not an interesting story. I mean, as I said, it's called New Saga. What did I think I was gonna get out of something with a generic ass name like that? Not a lot, and not a lot is what I got. During, like, the opening, like, monologues or opening world dump sequence, I thought we were going to get some, like, maybe some cool cuts of animation, and then it just was, like, fine. It was just fine action animation. Average. Nothing bad about it, nothing good about it. It's just fine. Which is more than I can say about how I thought this show was written. This is Not good.
Alright, new Saga. Goodbye. Next is Clevatess. I think that's how it's pronounced. I've only seen Crunchyroll promote this show, which means it's probably not something I'm going to be into, but you know what? We're going to give it the old college try anyway. I think it's I'm pretty sure it's an action anime. Don't know what kind of action anime, but let's find out.
Alright. Color me ever so slightly surprised. This is our first unexpected finish of the season. Just finished all of Clevatess. There's always at least one each season. I made a whole video about it. I just didn't think it was going to be the edgy action anime. Edgy dark fantasy anime. After I wrote a whole thing in my review of Takopi about edgy dark fantasy anime. To be clear, I don't love this show. It is serviceable at best. Although I will say the last two episodes are by far, well, I wouldn't say by far the best, but at least visually they're the best. And I was unsure as I was getting near the end of this one. It was like, do I actually like this? Or am I just pining for a specific type of anime that rarely is done well? And this just barely fills the void. I was wavering between those two positions. And I think by the end, I think I do actually kind of like it. And I will probably be tuning into the second season, which airs in the future sometime. I know they already announced the season 2. But, this is a dark fantasy anime. In the vein of stuff like, I guess, I'm not super well versed in dark fantasy anime. I think Uberblot is sort of like the best comparison just in terms of the type of setting. Just traditional dark fantasy anime with a lot of demons and such in it. Also, if you haven't been following me on social media, I just opened a Substack because I'm not going to have time in the future, most likely, to do full videos of stuff. So I just want to start actually doing like written scripts and getting them out. And I was so compelled by the contrast between the first episode of this show and the first episode of the previous show. What was it called? New Saga. That I banged out 1,100 words on it and put it on the Substack. So you can go find that. It's just Ember reviews on Substack. It'll have the Ember's, it'll have this channel's PFP if you're looking for it visually. But I was struck by the mild competence of this show's opening scene in comparison to the opening scene of New Saga, whereas New Saga was just giant mounds of exposition over characters we don't know dying and don't give a shit about. Whereas that sucked. This one was like, oh, a young girl is learning from her dad what the world is like and why the world functions in a certain way. It's a conversation between a curious child and a dad with a mysterious injury, like he's missing a leg, it's through the course of the dialogue, it's sort of like, oh, maybe this injury is related to what he's talking about, and so I guess he knows more than he is telling his daughter at the moment, but he's still giving her an accurate explanation of how the world works, and thus the audience is getting an accurate explanation of how the world works. It's not necessarily show don't tell. That's not something I particularly hang my hat on. It's just tell me in a way that's natural for it to be told. Like, explaining it to a child, good way for it to be told. And I will say, like, at least for this opening exposition scene, it's not super clunky. concise and the dialogue feels pretty natural. So I liked that. I was like, okay, you have done the bare minimum for setting up a fantasy world. And also, like, I also appreciated that this world isn't just carbon copy light novel fantasy world. It is not a not okay type fantasy world or isekai world. Because this one's based on a manga, I believe. No, I know that for sure. And I could have told you that even, or you could probably figure that out even without me telling you that, because manga high fantasy and dark fantasy feels very different from light novel high fantasy and dark fantasy. There is a very clear distinction between the two of them, and I vastly prefer manga ones, because not just because they have more, not just because, well, yeah, mostly because they tend to have more variety. With, I'm not saying this is all of them, but with a lot of light novel fantasy anime, or swords and knights and magic kinds of anime, that kind of fantasy anime. If you're doing light novel stuff, there's not a lot of variation. There really isn't. But if you're doing that with manga, you're kind of encouraged to come up with a unique fantasy world. Again, I'm not saying this is like completely 100% across the board, but with light novel stuff, it's sort of like, what's the word? Encouraged to be derivative, in a sense, because you can do, like, thing that everyone is familiar with, but here's the slight twist on it. There's sort of that incentive there with light novel fantasy anime. Or I guess I keep saying light novel. Anime based on light novels that are fantasy anime. You know what I'm saying. Whereas with manga, the incentive is to be different and to be unique in a lot of ways. To come up with something fresh and exciting, while also still relying on certain tropes here and there, but coming up with the interesting world is sort of the impetus. Which was Wistoria a manga, an adaptation of a manga? I think it was, but I'm not entirely sure. I can't be sure. I'm pretty sure it is, because it felt very My Hero Academia, but with high fantasy. But I'll have to look that up later. But anyway, that's one of the reasons I was able to finish Clevatess, because the world is genuinely very unique, but also, like, it has the vague structure of something you're familiar with, like single continent, different races, demons, yada yada. But the specifics of that are where it comes into its own. It's not like humans, elves, orcs, hobbits, etc. We have like honestly, I don't remember the names of any of the races except the Hedanians, which are basically like, it's interesting because, like, see, this is where the uniqueness comes in. They have the skill set of dwarves. They are like the crafters, and they have like crafting skills. They have the royal family has like this big forge. One of the towns they visit, it's just a town full of like carpenters. So it's like, in terms of what they do, they are dwarf coded, but they have like little dog noses, but also like sort of half elf ears, not like full giant pointy elf ears, but sort of like mildly pointy, like half elf kind of pointy ears. And then they have the pureblood ones are very distinctive in that they have like pink hair and like pale blue or pale purple eyes. And so that's a little elf coded in a certain way. But then you have the dog features on top of it, and it just feels, I won't say it's completely cohesive, but it feels different. And then there's like other races that are kind of just vaguely human. I think there are some other, I know there is an orc-ish race. They don't call them orcs, but it's got orc in the name. So it's like, okay, those are just the orcs. We haven't even gotten to them yet in this show. They will be probably season 2, maybe maybe even beyond that. But then the actual, but then on top of that, it's basically like, it's a continent, like just a single continent, and then outside the continent is basically the Darklands. And the Darklands are ruled by 4 demon lords in the north, south, east, and west. And it's sort of implied like once, like, one of the heroes is like launched up into the air by an attack in the Darklands, and she can see the curvature of the planet and see the vastness of the Darklands beyond it. And so it's sort of like this, one of the kings of the world has been sending out like heroes on expeditions into the Darklands, kind of like the Dark Continent in Hunter x Hunter, sending out expeditions into these Darklands to see if they can conquer them and defeat the demons there. They really suck at it, but they try. And also, it's very interesting because, like, I don't know, the show doesn't fully commit to this idea, but it does sort of vaguely hover around the notion of, yeah, the demons are right for defending their homeland, which there are some politically potentially troubling ideas in this, like that one, like, it's not like out and out promoting it, but it is vaguely colonialist, and like it sort of vaguely supports the idea of, yes, the humans should still try and trek out and conquer the Darklands, and stuff. But also, it's blurry. I don't know if it's blurry on purpose, but it is blurry. Either because of being intentionally morally gray on the matter, or because they just didn't think through the idea enough. I'm willing to bet the latter based on how it's written, but that's how it is. And then there's some potentially like royal bloodlines are good kind of talk in this, but also there's also a lot of talk about fate and the circumstances of your birth and how much that defines you. And I think that's going to be very interesting to see as this progresses, because we haven't really touched on that a lot aside from the character of Nerudu, who is this child of a bandit slave who then just turned into a bandit slave / sex slave. There's a teeny bit of rape in this show, and it's not treated like it's okay, but it's also not treated with horror or anything. It's an edgy, dark fantasy. Let's put it that way. It's not gonna go like, it's not Berserk levels, to be sure, but anyway, Nerudu is probably the closest in this season they get to being like the circumstances of your birth don't define you, with how she's able to break free of this notion of her just being born into slavery and just having to be a slave her entire life. Aside from that, I just really enjoyed the characters. Clevatess himself, the demon lord of the south who ends up taking a human form and going by the name of Klen, was easily the most interesting character in this, because it is a demon lord, not necessarily like siding with the humans, but more so like he takes an interest in this dying, this baby is the 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 prince, the heir to the throne of Hedon, is given to Clevatess by this some guy who was crushed by a building, and he's basically argues with Clevatess of like, circumstances don't define who you are. This baby has done nothing wrong. It doesn't deserve to die. And it sort of just, something about the idea just sort of clicks with Clevatess, and he goes, interesting. Prove me wrong. And so then he takes the baby and goes on a journey. Resurrects one of the heroes that went to kill him, that he had already killed and cut into pieces. And she becomes she being the child from the exposition to the beginning, becomes our main character. She's fine. Stoic lady fighter number 367, whatever. She's fine. She has like some nice little quirks here and there. And she's got some hype moments in aura. I say that semi-ironically, but also like some of her scenes in like the final episode are pretty solid, and just like, damn, that was hype. Aside from that, I really don't have a whole lot to say, because it's like it's an edgy, dark fantasy anime. That if you have any hesitations about that whatsoever, you're probably not gonna like this, because it is edgy. A lot of cackling evil villains in it that were just really annoying. The wizard guy in the middle arc of the series, despite being it's weird. Despite being a manga adaptation, it kind of has the same arc structure as like an anime adapted 3 volumes of a light novel. It's got like 4, 4, and 4. Although the first episode is a double-length episode that didn't need to be a double-length episode, because there was a very clear like delineating point around the 22-minute mark that could have just made this 13 episodes. I don't know why they didn't, other than broadcast, maybe. But apparently this is like a semi-popular show, so maybe they could have gotten 13 episodes out of it. Who knows? Anyway, I hate double-length first episodes. I don't like them. They're a waste of time. They could just make 2 episodes. What was I talking about? Right. It's an edgy show. This is an edgy show with a lot of cackling evil villains in it. I don't like those. But you know what? I will... For some reason, like, the gore suddenly actually got cool in the last couple episodes. Like, we actually see, like, split bones sticking out of people's arms and shit. Like, most of it before that was just, like, blood piñatas and people getting ripped apart, but at a distance, and just people getting swarmed by demons, and crunching sounds ensue. It's real. A lot of it's real. Ooh, wasn't that gross and gory and edgy and dark? I'm like, no, I just watched Taco P a little while ago. This is not that dark. It's graphic and like mildly unsettling, but it's not fucking dark. This feels like it would have run in Monthly Shonen Gangan. That's a good way to describe it. This is in the... I would put this in the... Yeah, like the... or whatever Ubelblot ran in. I only know Monthly Shonen Gangan off the top of my head because it's like... That's where like the edgy Square Enix manga come from. That's like... I think Ragnar Crimson ran in that. I believe Akame ga Kill ran in Gangan Joker, I think, which is a related magazine. It's in that category of stuff. It's your Kamega Kill, it's your Ragnar Crimson, it's your Ubelblot. It's in that realm of edgy fantasy anime. It is certainly not a seinen manga by any stretch, like Berserk, or at least not. Well, I'm not gonna use the demographic labels like that means anything. I should say it is not in the Berserk realm of dark fantasy where it is meticulously planned out, meted out how edgy it is. This is just like cackling evil villain edgy. And the animation is okay. Transitions are for children. It is perfectly competent animation. There's really nothing interesting about it aside from some of the character designs. Like Clevatess's like demon design is really cool, and also his human design is pretty cool. I do like the design for the Hiden race, the Hidenians, even if it's not fully cohesive. Action's fine until the last 2 episodes where it really fucking cranks into high gear. The studio is Le Duce, or Le Duce. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And they aren't really known for anything. The only things I know for a fact they did Adventures of Sinbad, the Magi prequel. They did that. And I think what was that show? Classroom Crisis? From like almost a decade ago now. I didn't watch much of that. Those are the only shows off the top of my head that I know they've done. But it's competent, and they just went all fucking Yutaka Nakamura on your ass with the last 2, with the fights in the last 2 episodes. I don't think he did it, but it is very of him, if that makes any sense. Utapon cubes everywhere. Yeah, this was fine. It definitely rallied at the end, even when I didn't think it was going to rally at the end. I thought it was about to piss me off with the cliffhanger for the penultimate episode. But I like this setting. Oh, the setting is definitely the biggest selling point for me just because it feels mostly unique. Characters are solid enough for me to see them through in this setting. Most of them don't annoy me to any significant degree. And it's competently shot, competently animated. The edginess can be a little bit too much at times, but hopefully I just get over it. Well, no, not gonna do that. Hopefully it mellows out a little bit, or doesn't. Hopefully it just gets cool edgy instead of cackling nerdy edgy. But yeah, this show was fine. It is definitely a little schlocky, but it's my kind of schlock, so yeah, is okay.
Alright, Clevatess is complete. And we're not going to go too high up. We're going to put it in the number 30 spot for now with a light 6. A lot of problems, but you know what? I had fun. Okay, next up. Dealing with Mikadono sisters is a breeze. I think this one's a reverse harem, I believe. No, it's not a reverse harem. It's a regular harem, I think. But it's, I heard some good things about it. I could go for a rom-com after the heaviness of Clevatess. Let's give it a go.
I can't say this with 100% certainty, but as far as I can remember, this is probably the first rom-com I've come across where it's just oops all tsunderes. I made it through 2 episodes of Mikadono Sisters. It is fine. It's very standard, very just extremely predictable. Just it hits all the right notes almost in like a mechanical sort of way. It is passable and really does not have anything that sticks out other than the cleanness and the detail of the character designs. I like the sporty tsundere the best of the 3. And honestly, I don't really like the voice acting for the acting sister, which is ironic. I think it's just not quite the right texture to it, and a lot of times it just doesn't match up with the animation. It just feels very... There's something about this show that just feels fake. I don't know how to describe it other than that, but there's something about the particular saccharineness of the interactions here that just feels off. It doesn't feel genuine, and I think that's why I'm not really vibing with it, because it's like it is in theory and in writing hitting all the right notes and doing all the right things. It just doesn't have the chemistry to make it work. I could not see myself watching this whole series, even though there's nothing particularly wrong with it, outside of the fan service is just so in your face sometimes. It's like decent fan service, but it's not like incredible. Yeah, it's just not very... It's just not hooking me the way that I would hope. I didn't really laugh all that much. The romantic parts were kind of romantic, but again, there's not enough chemistry. It's just not hitting.
Alright, Mikadono Sisters, unfortunately, coming off the list. Next is Captivated by You. I believe this is a half-length series, not in the terms of the episode length, but the episode count. I think it's only 6 episodes, and I think it's a Dogokobo series. Like, Dogokobo had, 2 different half-length series this season, I think. And I don't know why, but I guess I'm about to find out.
You ever watch a show and you keep watching it not because you think it's good, but because you're trying to figure out why someone would think it's good? Like, I watched 6-ish minutes of Captivated by You, and it's a comedy slice of life series, and I was trying to figure out where the comedy was. I could not find the comedy until 5-ish minutes in, and I knew that wasn't going to be the bulk of the comedy because it was a very situational kind of thing, like just boys fucking around being boys. It was kind of funny, very, very mildly funny. Didn't really get a explicit interaction out of me, but yeah, this is just not funny and not interesting, and it's fucking ugly. It's not pleasant to look at, and it is made by Dogokobo, which is surprising because Dogokobo usually makes stuff that's at least pleasant to look at. This is not. I was gonna say this is probably their worst looking show yet, but then I remembered Osamake, actually, I didn't actually remember Osamake. I remembered that there was a show that looked like shit, and I had to look up what the title was, and it's Osamake. That fucking really terrible looking rom-com from a couple of years ago. Yeah, this is bad.
Okay, Captivated by You is off the list. Next is Harmony of Mille-Feuille. I don't know French. No, I don't know anything about this one other than that it's unlicensed, and so I had to rip it from somewhere. I think it had a cute anime girl on the front, so let's see what it's about.
You know, it's very rare that I know that I should turn a show off within the first 5 seconds. Let me explain why, because this one's a little subtle. So it looks like not quite an idol show, but I think it's going to be like a cappella stuff. And the first scene is the group tuning themselves. Tuning. They are getting on wavelength with each other, with their voices. The first girl comes in. The second girl comes in. And they're singing in unison. And I can hear that they're out of tune. Not by much, but enough that I picked it up. Now, granted, I've played music for the majority of my life, so that is something I know, but also that's something that the show should know. So, either it was intentional, in which case they didn't forecast that at all, they did not lead on that was something at all, or they just didn't notice. Now, if you're wondering, how could I tell they were out of tune? It's because when you sing in harmony with or when you sing in unison with someone, the show's fucking tricking me with my brain with the goddamn fucking title. When you sing in unison with someone, and you're not quite in tune, it's really easy to hear. Even if you're like just a little bit off, you'll hear like waves, like a little bit of wavering, as though it's not quite right. And that's what I heard immediately as soon as the second girl came in. And it didn't fix itself, even after the other girls came in and started harmonizing on top of it. So, I knew I should turn the show off immediately at that point. But I was like, let's give it a shot. What else could go wrong? And then the main character is immediately the most annoying, unrealistic, antisocial piece of shit I've ever seen. Not antisocial, socially awkward. Just absolutely nonsensical ways of being socially awkward and having social anxiety. And it's not even funny. It's just like annoying. I hate it. It's bad.
Alright, Harmony coming off the list. Time for an end cap with Dandadan Season 2. This one's going to be interesting, because on the one hand, really liked the first season, thought it was a great adaptation of the manga material that I read. However, it was very shortly after season 1 that, in terms of material, that I dropped the manga, because I just didn't like the story, and I didn't like how it was written. So we'll see if I like the anime version more.
Oh, this is gonna be my hot take of the season. Okay. I got a little over 2 episodes into season 2 of Dandadan, and I pointed out in the prelude to this that I believe I pointed out that I dropped the manga somewhere in where this season takes place. But honestly, I didn't even get that far, because a lot of factors there's a lot of factors to why I didn't like this season in particular, which I kind of talked about in season 1 as well, which is just, I don't like Gigi. I just don't find him to be, interesting character aside, I don't find him to be a fun character. I don't like seeing him on screen. I just think he's not fun to watch. And that goes for a lot of the characters this season, or at least in the first 2-ish episodes that I saw. Now, before we even get to that, this show did not do itself any favors with where it left off. Because if you'll recall, Dandadan Season 1 leaves off halfway through an arc, or like a third of the way into an arc, if I recall correctly. So, there is no momentum going into this. It has to work so fucking hard to kick up the momentum to get this going. It's like, oh, just go back and watch season 1. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that shit. And also, I shouldn't have to. If you're going to start, the start of a season should have enough narrative momentum to kick the gas into high gear if it needs to be kicked into high gear. But that's not really the main reason why I'm dropping this. It certainly didn't help. I will say that. It certainly didn't help. Certainly didn't help with it leading off with the second, maybe third sexual assault scene of the series involving Momo. Which, again, if I recall from when I talked about the first season, people were like, oh, it was just in the first episode, it's fine. No, it's not. It happens multiple times in Dandadan, and it's a problem. Not that putting sexual assault in narratives is a problem, it's just that it just does it more than you would think it does, and it's a little off-putting. Like, this ain't Berserk. This is a high school adventure anime. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Real reason that I'm not continuing this one is, again, I don't care for Gigi at all, and also, I just can't care about the evil eye. I just don't care about him as a character. I didn't care about him in the manga, and I don't care about him in the anime. The theory for why he's a well-written character is there. I understand the theory for it. I understand the building blocks of what makes that character compelling. But for one reason or another, I just don't find it compelling. I think it's kinda sauceless and just not that interesting. I don't find it interesting. I don't find it compelling. I don't find it emotionally investing. The theory is there without the execution. For me. Because obviously a lot of people like this arc, I think. I just don't. And this character, specifically this character in combination with Gigi, the guy that he is possessing, is probably the biggest reason why I dropped Dandadan, the manga. I got like 7-ish volumes in, I think. Somewhere around there. Might be even less than that. But I just don't care. And this arc requires you to care about those characters. It is you can't get through this arc if you don't care about those characters. Like, I debated trying to finish the 3rd episode just to be like, well, let's finish this arc, maybe, and see if I care about what comes after. But I couldn't even get that far. I'm not going to force myself through something to hope that it gets better later. I'm just not going to do that. I'm over that. I am well over that. And so I don't really care to watch more Dandadan, which sucks because the production is still there. It's still really well animated, well shot. It's got some interesting shifts in animation style. All of the technical aspects, like the visual aspects, are definitely there. Soundtrack is popping. I just can't be bothered to care about what's going on screen, which I have seen other people say is like a lot of people just can't be bothered to care about what's happening. And not that that makes my complaint valid that other people are saying the thing. It's just that, like, it's nice seeing other people, understand your point of view. It's just nice being able to see that. So, yeah, I just don't care.
Alright, Dandadan is unfortunately coming off the list. That's a bit disappointing, but also not surprising based on how I feel about the manga. What a shame.